This is the demo video for my term project for CS1660 Intro to Cloud Computing. So the first thing you're going to want to do is come to this GitHub page, and you're going to want to download this repository so you have access to the files in the Mini Search Engine Project folder. Once that's done, you can go to your downloads and extract the downloaded zip file and check that you have the files in Mini Search Engine Project. So after you've done that, you're going to want to head to cloud.google.com because you're going to need a GCP account in order to run this application. So if you don't already, go ahead and set up a new account and make sure you sign up for the free trial, because you will also need a billing account with a small number of credits in order to run the Dataproc cluster that this application runs on. So after you've done that, go ahead to the Cloud Console and create a new project. You can name this whatever you want. I'm going to name it Search Engine Project. After that's created, go ahead and select that project. Next thing you're going to want to do is click on the menu button over here and scroll down to where it says Dataproc and click on that. And since this is the first time you're using Dataproc in a new project, you're going to need to enable the Cloud Dataproc API. This might take a minute or two, so I'm going to pause the video here and fast forward to after that's done. So after that's finished, you should be at a page that looks like this. You're going to want to go ahead and create a cluster. You can name the cluster whatever you want. I'm going to name it Project Cluster, and just leave the rest of these settings as their default. Go ahead and click Create. You should see this as provisioning. It should take about a minute or two, and then it will be up and running. In the meantime, we can head to the Cloud Storage Staging bucket for this newly created cluster. And once you're in there, you're going to want to create two folders. The first folder you want to name Data, and the second folder you want to name Jar. Make sure you've named the folders as you see here, otherwise the application won't recognize the folders and won't run properly. So then you're going to navigate into the Jar folder you just created, and you're going to want to upload files and go into the repository you downloaded under the Mini Search Engine Project Jar folder and upload these 3 jar files. While we're waiting for that to finish, we can go ahead and open up Eclipse, which you should have downloaded and installed by now if you haven't already, as well as Docker and X11. So if you haven't done that, please follow the instructions on the GitHub repository to install and configure those real quickly. And then we're going to go ahead and open up Eclipse. You're going to want to go to File, import under Maven and select existing Maven project. Under the root directory, click on Browse and go to where you downloaded the repository, into the mini search engine project folder, and click on Search Engine GUI. Select that folder. Then click on Finish. You see that was just imported here, and we're going to go into the source/main/java folder and click on Search Engine GUI.java. Then you're going to want to scroll down to where you see the comment GCP variables, and you're going to want to input the names of your project ID, cluster name, bucket name, and region from your GCP project into here. So we're going to go ahead and do that. When you go to input your project ID, make sure you enter project ID and not the project name. These will sometimes be the same if you use an uncommon project name, but if you use a more common name or words in your name, then you might have some letters, then you might have some numbers tacked on to the end of your project ID here. And then for the region, this should be the same for both your cluster and your storage bucket. You can see right here is the region. And if we go back to our Dataproc cluster, you can see the region is also US Central 1 here. So go ahead and input that. And then we're going to export this file as a jar with dependencies, but before we do that, we're going to need to run it once. So right click and go to Run as Java Application, and then you can just X out of this right away. And then right click again, go to Export, under Java, click on Runnable Jar File. Select the launch configuration, which should be Search Engine GUI, and that's why we had to run the file once, so that it recognized the main method and would show up under our launch configurations. And click on Package Required Libraries into Generated Jar if that's not already selected. And then you're going to want to select the destination as the repository you downloaded, mini search engine project, and jar, and make sure it's named Search Engine GUI as you see here, otherwise the application won't work correctly. Click on Save and Finish. You might see some warnings here, but don't worry about that. Alright, and the last thing we need to do for GCP setup is we need to get our Google credentials so that we can access our Dataproc cluster from the application. So you're going to want to click on the menu button and go down to IAM and admin and click on service account and create a service account. You can name this whatever you want. I'll name it project account. You can put a description if you want, but you don't have to. Create and continue. And for the role, you want to select owner under basic. Click continue. And then you can just leave these blank as well and click on done. Then click on the newly created service account. Click on the keys tab, add key, create new key. Make sure JSON is selected, and this will download JSON for you with the credentials. Then go to your downloads folder and rename the JSON file you just downloaded to project.json.json, as you see here. And then move that into the repository you downloaded into the mini search engine project folder. And that should be in the same folder as the Docker file here. And then go ahead and open a command prompt or terminal. Alright, so my recording cut out, but I think it left off after I had just finished creating the service account key and moving the downloaded JSON file to the downloaded GitHub repository folder inside the mini search engine project folder. So after you've done that, you're going to open up a terminal or command prompt, and you're going to want to navigate to the mini search engine project folder. And then you're going to want to check that you have Docker working. Just do that quick command and you should get something like that. Now to run the Docker container will be different depending on whether you have Windows, Mac, or Linux. I have a Windows computer, so I'm going to demo doing that real quick, but if you have a Mac or Linux machine, then check the README in the GitHub repository for instructions on how to run that properly. So we're going to go ahead and build the Docker image by using this command. That should take about a minute if you haven't done that before. Mine might be quicker because I've already built it previously. And then for Windows users, you're going to need to get your IP address using ipconfig. And there's also images on how to do that on the GitHub page. I'm going to fast forward through that real quick. So after you've found your IP address, you're going to want to run the command docker run and pass in the environment variable display equal to your IP address :0 and then the name of the Docker image you created. And that should pop up the application like this. So you're going to go ahead and choose your files. It should have copied over the data files for you. So select the 3 data files, open those. As you can see, it's uploading these files to the GCP storage bucket for you. And you can't construct the inverted indices until the files have been uploaded. So just wait for that to finish. It should take about 30 seconds or so. And once that's done, the button will pop up and you can go ahead and click that, and then it will be disabled again so you can't accidentally start multiple jobs on your Dataproc cluster. And I'm going to go ahead and fast forward through this because it takes a little bit. It should take about 2 minutes or so. After that's finished running, you should come to a page that looks like this. It'll tell you how long it took to construct the inverted indices, and this includes the time for the client to communicate with the cluster and get the results of the job. And then from this menu, you can either search for a term in the data files you input, or you can look up the top n frequent terms. So first we'll search for a term, and you can enter the term below. This will only accept alphabetical characters, so if you type something like 3 and try and search, it'll tell you to enter a term containing only alphabetical characters. So we're going to search for the word king. And again here, the search button is disabled after a valid input is sent to GCP so that you can't spam the cluster with jobs. So we're going to go ahead and fast forward again while we wait for the job to continue. It should take about a minute or so. After getting the results for the job, it'll tell you how long your search took, again including how long the amount of time it took to communicate with GCP to get the results. And it'll show you every file with the term that you searched in it, and it'll be ordered by the most frequent, the files with the most occurrences of your word first. So we can see here 3 King Henry VI has the most occurrences of king at 392. We can scroll down and see all the files that contain that word. And then after we're done looking at our results, we can go back to the search. And then if we don't want to search another term, we can head back to the selection menu. And we can search for the top n frequent terms across all of the data files that we inputted. Again, this doesn't allow invalid entries, so if I try and type a word, say king, and try to search it, it'll tell me that's invalid and to enter a positive number. If I try and enter a negative number, that won't work either. So I'll search for the top 50 terms. And again, this should take about a minute as well, so I'm going to go ahead and fast forward to when the results show up. So after that's finished, you should come to a page like this. It'll again tell you how long your search took, and it'll list the top n terms and their frequency throughout all of the data files that you inputted. After you're done looking at that, you can go back to the top n search page or back to the selection and search for more terms or do a different top n frequent term search. Alright, so that is the basic functionality of my application. You can construct inverted indices from input data files. You can search for terms from those constructed inverted indices, and you can also calculate the top n frequent terms from those indices using Hadoop jobs on your GCP Dataproc cluster. The last button here is just the X in the upper right, which closes the application. And as you can see in your command prompt or terminal, there are also lines that explain a lot of the steps that the application goes through when you click different buttons. And if you want to check your Dataproc cluster to see that the jobs were run properly, you can go to Jobs, And you can see here the 3 jobs that we did to create the inverted indices, to search for the term king, and to search for the top 50 most frequent terms. And if you want more details, you can click on these to see the output of the Hadoop job. And you should also be able to see, if you refresh your storage bucket, there should be 3 new folders. One for indices that contains the output of the inverted indices Hadoop job, one for search that contains the output of the searching for a term Hadoop job, and the top N folder, which contains the output of the top N Hadoop job. And so that is basically it. If you follow these instructions provided in this video and on the GitHub page, you should be able to get this application working on whatever computer you're using.